In the last video, I shared my vision for a diorama. In this episode, we're actually going to start building this diorama. In truth, I actually started building this diorama ages ago, but I've only done phase one, which I guess is the floor. Styrofoam board formed the foundation of my diorama. Basically, I'm planning for this interior to take up something like 2/3 of the styrofoam board. The greater part of the interior's footprint is covered with a layer of foam board. Because I wanted to slot my miniatures into this diorama later down the line, I had to adjust the height of the floor. I did this by sandwiching small plastic bases, which I don't really use anyway, between the foam board and the styrofoam. And that brings us to the topic of this video. This video is all about texture. One kind of texture that's common in the Mine Revival style is the humble square tile. Well, that and the not so humble square tile. Now, what you're seeing here isn't actually a tile. Rather, it's the product of a concrete mold. I love this simple texture. In part, I think, because it reminds me of something you might see in Minecraft. And if the interiors of BioShock's Rapture are anything to go by, we can see that square tiling was common in Art Deco more generally. So I'm going to make quite extensive use of this pattern in my diorama. And achieving this pattern is super simple. All you need to do is order a few sheets of plasticard that are already prepared with the pattern, and you can get these in different sizes. I've chosen 3 different sizes in an attempt to introduce some variety among my grids. I begin by cutting sections of floor. Since I already have the miniatures that are going to live in this mansion, I want everything to be scaled around them. I trace out how much space their bases take up on the sheet of medium squares and cut those tiles out. Now I'm cutting around the squares rather than through them, hoping that this will leave a relatively seamless connection between the minis and the rest of the floor. I'll let you judge whether this was successful or not. Now at the time, when I was cutting out all this plasticard, I didn't actually have a Dremel, so I did it all by hand with just a hobby knife or a hobby saw. Do not recommend that. So if you're going to be getting into plasticard sheets and playing around with that, would highly recommend having some kind of power tool like a Dremel to make things way easier. Now, it's no surprise that you can add texture to your project with a textured rolling pin. I mean... Duh, they're a textured rolling pin. Adding texture is what they do. But what if I told you that there was a slightly alternative way that you could use a textured rolling pin to get some interesting results? After a session of browsing Green Stuff World's catalogue one evening, I noticed that some of the rolling pins were not made exclusively from a repeated pattern like the cobblestone or brickwork rolling pins. Instead, they were arrays of distinct elements. This got me thinking. To make any specific element, all I would need to do is make a mold and a cast, which I was able to do for this element using blue stuff. Now, do I really recommend using this method? Honestly, not really. It's kind of tedious, but hey, if you want to do it, then good luck to you. I would love to know. Yeah, good on you, I suppose. Now, in this last section, I'm going to be adding some texture to my diorama with something that's been in front of our eyes this whole time. That's right, cork. Cork is a building material that will be familiar to most hobbyists, useful for the purposes of creating stone texture. And this might be in the form of rough cork used to resemble uncut rock, or sheets of cork used to represent cut stone or asphalt or concrete. To get the right amount, I started once again by making a pattern or a template with paper, then applying the pattern to the cork sheet to cut out the right shape and size. And then the sheets were easily adhered to the diorama using PVA glue. Well, that pretty much brings us to the present. As you can see, I have completed the floor of this diorama. And unfortunately, it's a little dusty. So the next thing to do is to build the walls. That's kind of uncharted territory for me. So stick around, like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. I'm the good dude. This has been my good mood, and I'll see you in the future.